Hello, welcome to Meant to Move. My name is Vanessa Leone. I am your host. And in this episode of Meant to Move, I have the epic Ben Seong with me. Now, Ben is one of Australia's leading body recomposition experts. He's an international presenter and educator. I am really lucky to call him a friend of mine, and he is an epic strength coach. He also annually educates over 10,000 trainers. So we're talking about a little bit of expertise from this man here. And the reason why I'm so excited to have him on this episode is you will see why when the topic comes up. So yes, we go into a little bit of science because he does have honours degrees in applied science and psychology. Again, I don't want to brag about him, but I am a little bit. But his ethos, his systems, his methods are so holistic, so open, and so welcoming and realistic. So for someone who has trained athletes to, pretty much everyone else, is like his message I can wholeheartedly get across, and I absolutely love spreading what he does. Sorry, that is Ben. And why we had this chat today is we were talking about some amazing or interesting, I suppose, recommendations from one of the world's leading podcasters and researchers. If you've not heard of Dr. Huberman, you should definitely go look him up. But in this episode, we have a look at a short clip where Huberman features a guest called Dr. Layne Norton. And this was back in August 2024. And this episode is titled Tools for Nutrition and Fitness, if anyone wants to go back to it. Has been watched over 500,000 times. And so it's a message that's permeated quite a lot. We also discuss Huberman's own recommended training protocol, program, regime, whatever you'd like to call it, from 2022, which is free to download from his website. All of the links for these clips where we got this from are in the show notes. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because, again, we see so many people talking to incredible podcasters like Dr. Huberman, and he has done so much in terms of really bringing lots of issues with health and fitness and lots of things about health and fitness to the forefront where many people haven't before. And I think that that's truly commendable. However, we really want to have a look at, so here's the science, here are the recommendations from these people. But how applicable are they when we're looking at our regular clients, when we're looking at our everyday clients, or even when we're looking at our athletes and myself as a coach? Are these recommendations applicable, useful, or even beneficial for most people? And so in this episode, Ben and I break down this clip with Dr. Layne Norton and also Huberman's own training protocol. So if you're really interested, check it out, download it. It is fascinating, and so you will see reference to it. If you're listening along, I highly recommend going back to it after you've listened if you're curious, but we do explain it as we go. And I say this with as much love to Huberman and Layne Norton because I'm a follower of them. Like I watch their social media, I listen to their clips, I've listened to Huberman podcast. Not going to lie, I do find it a little dry and a little boring at times, but it's great information. But every time I listen to it, I only really take small nuggets. And so today we want to dissect what nuggets we can potentially take from these clips, where they're useful, and how you can implement them into your life. So without further ado, here we go. Hello, welcome back to Meant to Move. Thanks, Ben, for coming in to join us. It's been a day. It's Chinese or Lunar New Year. It is Ramadan. It's Mardi Gras. So we lost our round table, but we found Ben. And
Hooray.
We had technical issues. It is a day. So Ben is here. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited because you're actually going to give a really interesting perspective on what I wanted to talk about today. And what we wanted to talk about today was, I don't think it's like training schedules, but it's like training regimes and training practices, like different systems and methodologies, and everyone seems to have their system that they recommend. And
Yep.
Ben, how many people do you think you might have trained over the years, just to put into perspective for someone listening?
Oof. Well, see, I've been in the personal training industry as a personal trainer probably for about 24 years.
Yeah, wow.
So over that time, a significant amount of people. I can't put my finger to it.
Exactly.
A few thousand, I would have said a few thousand.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think the spectrum of that varies, when you first start from just normal general population to more specified clientele, people, competing at the highest levels, sport, Olympics to rehab work. So just a range, a plethora of clients. Yeah.
I love this. So you're going to see a couple of videos come up. If you're
Mm.
listening, you might not be able to see, so we'll explain what's coming up. And what I've also shared with Ben is a copy of Huberman's Ideal Training Week. And I kind of have it up on the screen here. And just for anyone who's listening along, he recommends doing something every day. On his first day, it's a Sunday, his first day is a long endurance workout. So longer than 30 minutes. Aim for 1,800 to 200 minutes of zone 2 cardio a week. So I don't know if he's doing it all then. Day 2, leg resistance training day. About a 60 to 70 minute exercise session. Day 3 is his recovery, hot cold exposure. And he has a whole protocol for both of those. Day 4, I find this interesting. I'm super curious to hear your thoughts. Torso and neck resistance training, and in brackets, indirectly trains arms. Everybody, don't forget about the arms. Again, about a 60 to 70 minute training protocol. Thursday, day 5, cardiovascular training. This is moderate intensity. So he's starting to work a lot here. I would say he's creeping up into high at 80% of maximum effort, but it's interesting. Then on Friday, day 6, high intensity interval training. It doesn't really say how long it goes for, but I can't believe it goes for too long. Try to get to maximum heart rate is what his recommendation is. So it's pretty big. That's a big day. And then day 7, arms, neck, and calves training. And again, it's about a 70-minute session. Just looking at that and thinking about Huberman's protocol here. How closely would your training, Ben, for you personally, mimic his regime there?
How closely?
Yeah.
I would say maybe 50 to 60%. I do not add in the cardio components of what he's doing. I would do resistance work probably 4 to 6 days a week.
Yep.
For heavier days, definitely working more on, the torso or the legs. And then a focus on the weaker areas that I need to focus on for 2 days through the week. So I'll work out 6 days in a week and have a day of rest.
Interesting. And for anyone listening, I definitely do not have a protocol like that. I would say that's pretty demanding regime. And with my hormonal issues and cycle, with my endo, not to mention my autoimmune and just the general chronic fatigue, I try to work out properly, engage in a workout 5 days a week, but I'm having movement every day. So that's really fascinating. How many clients or coaches that you coach do you think would be close to achieving something like what he's recommending?
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Why do you think that is?
I think from the perspective of Huberman, if you watched him, in his podcast and what he's all about, he really is into the empirical science. He's also into biohacking. And so his protocol would definitely combine a range of what is found empirically, because even when he talks about training, he talks about training lengthened positions, shortened positions. He talks about varying it, alternating it, changing it so your nervous system doesn't plateau. So he's delving into the empirical science of that, of training itself. And then even when he's talking about his cardio protocol, he's doing a cascading cardio protocol that starts light, moves on to, more intense cardio protocol to high intensity interval training and so forth. So he knows about the nervous system, is taking that into account. It is the way he's designed that particular protocol is a full-on program. Typically, if I were to look at that, it will be someone intermediate to advanced. Also, it has to suit a person's lifestyle where the person probably doesn't have too much going on in their life when it comes to life itself, right? If you're talking about the average person, there is no way you would find the average person having time amidst family, amidst work, amidst the other commitments of their life to engage in something like that. So this is definitely to be a person who prioritizes biohacking, prioritizes perhaps longevity, and then looking at all those biomarkers that nowadays, when we're delving into the biohacking space, biomarkers that perhaps could be blood work tested,
Mm.
Could be HRV testing, looking at that and going, okay, do my markers actually meet that? They are focusing more on the data and very much less on, I guess, the biofeedback of the body.
That's a really great explanation. I think that you made that so simple because I and I'm assuming like many people look at that protocol and that just looks overwhelming. It looks like a lot. And I
Mm,
appreciate the science that goes into it. Like my nerd brain's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's
mhm.
nice. Well thought out. It's beautiful. And
Yeah,
then the practical coach side of my brain goes, I don't have anyone who can do that.
yeah.
Like I don't have anyone in the real life who can do that. And so if we're if if you had someone in front of you who's like, I want to get there one day, or I feel bad because my regime doesn't look anything like that, what do you want to say to them, who people who aspire to kind of get to those levels because they've heard the Hubermans and other people talk about this perfect training regime?
For me, it's more about every time, if I look at a client, it is what do they want to get? But what is their endpoint?
Mm,
So is following this particular protocol firstly going to help them get to their endpoint? Because if their endpoint is nowhere close to what the protocol actually does, then there is no need to follow the protocol. So I need to find out
mm,
what is their ultimate goal,
yeah.
right? What do they want to get out of it? That protocol is great for someone who is a nerd, who in the sense that they love to understand the empirical science behind that.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? How am I putting my body through all that? And typically, if let's say you had an end goal to say, look, I just want to do what Huberman does because I believe that he may have the elixir of life, then my question is, again, commitment, right? So what can I do right now to slowly tweak your lifestyle so much so that it represents or becomes like whatever the protocol is? So the
Yeah.
protocol there has 3 main days of cardio and I believe it's 3 days of
Yeah.
resistance training,
Yeah.
right? Now, I think the resistance training part, 3 days a week, is going to be straightforward.
Yeah.
So it's not too complex for anyone coming to the gym 3 days a week. Most of my clients will be able to commit to that,
Yeah.
right? But obviously, there is a structure on what is suggested, meaning that you do a legs workout. This is how you structure legs. You do a torso workout. This is how you use torso. You structure the torso workout. And again, he's actually put in neck training, which is really interesting.
I know, right? We'll get it back up
And
again. Here we go. Yeah.
so there
Torso
there
and
is
neck.
torso and neck training is twice a week.
Yeah.
So when you look at neck training, I think he brings up a very valuable point, is that a lot of people don't actually train their neck. The neck is actually part of your posterior chain.
Mhm.
Very much like if you look at the development of muscle, now we are very muscle centric in our focus in science. We're saying that if you want to live longer, the muscle of longevity, or the organ of longevity, is muscle.
Yep.
We have
Yep.
to focus on muscle, and it's becoming more pronounced in a lot of the, I guess, the
The
Instagram,
data. Yeah.
the data that we see, but also on the Instagram feeds that we see, right? But a lot of people, when they talk about muscle, they also fail to, I guess, acknowledge that there are other markers out there that will correlate with longer life. Now, having a stronger neck and a thicker neck is actually one of them. The other one is actually grip strength, which is a
Yep.
very simple test. So a lot of these simple tests is going to be extremely important because your neck preserves the most important part of your body. Essentially, is your brain. If your brain is out, that's that. So training your neck is actually first and foremost, actually helps to, it can be an upregulation of your nervous system. So for example, for some of my athletes, if I need them to have a strength day, I might actually start with some neck exercises. This could be both concentric, eccentric, but also isometric neck movements to help them increase their nervous system recruitment. Only
Mhm.
then, when I put them into a lifting program or a strength program, their nervous system is primed to recruit more muscle fibers to lift heavier. Right. So that makes sense from my perspective, having trained athletes, having trained myself with neck training, that makes sense.
It's cool. Very cool.
Right. So neck torso. So 3 days of training, simple. But then when you start to layer other things on, that's
Yeah.
when it starts to get time consuming. I don't think it's over complex. I think it's time consuming.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's in the next video we'll show there's an interesting point that we want to make, but I think that you brought it up there is that a lot of people, they look at something like this and they automatically feel disheartened because they're like, well, I'm never going to get that, or I'm way too busy to be able to dedicate that much time to my training. I've got a family, I've got, this, I've got all of the things that kind of require your time and your presence. And I think you make a good point by saying, hey, most of us can kind of do 3 days a week. And there's no reason why we can't use that protocol as a fortnightly thing to adhere to. And I think a lot of people look at exercise too cut and dry in terms of their routine. So like, I have to do this the same way every week. And we're not really the same every week. Like every week is a little bit different. There's 7 days in a week. So it's not like we have symmetrical days as well. Like it's not like it's an 8-day week where you can, chop it into like nice symmetry. It's an asymmetrical week. So using a protocol like that and following it in a fortnightly fashion, that's actually not a bad way to be able to hit all of those, empirical evidence, evident ways of training, saying like, this is all really good for you. But hey, instead of doing it, trying to cram it all into a week, why don't you try that over 14 days, or maybe try that over 10 days? And then every 10 days, you've got that kind of cycle. If you need more rest days, if you need more everything in between. And I think sometimes that we forget that we can take the body of, something as nerdy like Huberman's training protocol and actually just kind of go, okay, how do I adapt this for my body? What do you think about something like that?
No, 100%. I completely agree with you. And I think it's a very great, a really nice approach. I do think that people like the idea of weekly because it's just easy to think about it. Whereas if you think about every 10 days, it's like, okay, once I finish my 10 days, I start on a Wednesday and then I gotta, and then where do I stop again? So it gets a little bit confusing, but what you're mentioning, it does make a lot of sense as well because there's a lot less pressure in trying to get things done within 7 days. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it obviously 14 days makes more sense in the 2-week thing, but there's so many training apps and there's so many ways to be able to track what you're doing and follow what you're doing. I don't think that it's improbable to look at it more as a 10-day kind of cycle. Like something like that would fit my body better on a 10-day or a 12-day kind of cycle than a 14-day. And I think the thing that he's missing there, if anything, is I don't know how you feel about this, but it feels very like super structured. Now, I'm not a very structured person. I would love to see an element of like spontaneity or play or skill. Like, because I think like the play and skill element for guys like Huberman, they don't really take that into account when it comes to like longevity. But if you look at the data, and again, if you look at research and people talk about playfulness and joy and learning, those things can be utilized really well, like really easily in a gym setting or in a class setting. And I think that there's something that we're not necessarily focusing well on. Like, what are your thoughts on something like that?
I think you've hit the nail on the head in the sense that if you're, I think if you're an A-type personality, that naturally you don't have time. You are more concerned about performance and optimization of whatever you are doing with regards to time, then I think a protocol like that could potentially work, a very structured protocol, because that's, that you're keeping health as a priority, but you go in, you get your things done, you know exactly what you're doing, and you're getting out. So there's no room for error. And there are people and there are cultures that gravitate towards that. And those are your A-type personalities. So if you're working with CEOs, you're working with people that are really focused, I think that can be a tool. But majority of the clientele is exactly what you're saying. And people need to play. People need to be a little bit more flexible. People need change. And I think it is that change that allows them to appreciate a session as opposed to drag their feet into, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this because it's good for my health. And this is where you conflict exactly what you're trying to suppress. If you're trying to drop cortisol, you're increasing cortisol by being stressed walking into a session. So, and we need to know the function of the person that you're training. That's where individualization comes in, extremely handy.
Yeah. So if you've got, say, a mum and a dad, they're looking at this protocol. I want to live long. I want to live healthy for my kids. This is what I want to do. Are there things that you would recommend, for play or for spontaneity or for just movement that could fit in with that protocol?
If you're asking me, I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the information that we see, including the information from Huberman, now we are moving into a science or empirical based fitness era, where everything needs to be somewhat supported by numbers, data, and science.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is important because it allows us to understand things. But understand that when it comes to numbers and data and science, we are not looking at the entire population of the globe. We are only collating what we see and we understand. And that's a limitation of science. It's
Yeah.
N meaning the population that you're testing. The more we rely on numbers, the less we rely on what our body tells us, which is biofeedback. We feel like we are so ready to look at our whoop, to look at the numbers, understand HRV, sleep with it,
Yep.
analyze it, that we don't realize that we need to breathe. We need to ground ourselves. We need to understand when we eat certain foods and we don't do well with it. What does our body tell us? More concerned about looking at the numbers like calories. Calories tells us this is how many calories I'm eating. That food has X amount of macros. That's good because this amount of protein, I should be following it based on my weight. But wait a minute. Can your body actually break down that type of protein that you're taking? Is it that
Yeah.
good for you? What are your actual requirements? Are you listening to what your body's saying? Are you
Yep.
understanding? Do you get what I mean? So the
I
more we
agree.
rely on data, the less we rely on what our body tells us. And this is the dangerous part because we become insensitive to us,
Yep.
to what we need. We become so robotic in trying to chase longevity. But if you look at this again, and I want to throw this out there, if you look at any sort of longevity studies, if you look at
Mm-hmm.
centenarians, people who have lived the longest, we're talking about blue zones, right, around the world,
Yep.
you realize that none of these people who have lived for over 100 years would have ever in their life followed such a protocol.
Yeah.
Never. And everyone would have a different reason to why they're living long. The commonality among these people is that they stress less. They eat what is available to them. They eat in moderation. They eat natural foods. Some smoke, some don't smoke,
They have
right? Some drink,
connection.
some don't drink. They have connection, but they're connected to their body. They
Yep.
do it because they feel they can do it. It's more about that connection with their bodies, more about connection with purpose, as opposed to the science. Now, the science is trying to find out the evidence. It's going to go, okay, let's look at the evidence of increase or decrease HRV, which is important for regulating your parasympathetic nervous system. And as a result of that, you're going to live longer. So it's connecting the dots. But looking at HRV, looking at science, it's probably in the last 20 years. Now, these people have lived past 100. They did not understand the science. There was no science
Yep.
to back that up. They just went with how their body felt. They lived with a purpose. And that was that.
And that is that. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. That's why I find these trends so fascinating, and I think that, like what you're saying, is you can almost stress yourself out more trying to follow the protocols of longevity and health from all of these
110%.
from all of these scientific people.
110%. 110%. And people stress themselves out with all this. And I see my clients coming in with gadgets, Whoop gadgets. They're coming in with all their bands and gizmos. And, I actually recently every month I do a live seminar for my inner circle. So I've actually got an inner circle of personal trainers that join and become part of the circle, sit in for a live seminar with me every month. And I just did one in January it's called Fit Future 2026. It delved into understanding the evolution of fitness moving forward,
Mm.
and when we look at that, a lot of fitness is relying on these science, right? The empirical science is also relying on a bunch of gadgets and data. So when I'm talking about gadgets and data in this instance with you, I'm definitely not poo-pooing it. And don't get me wrong, I see validation in the numbers because I'm also from the science background to understand and interpret. But at the same time, when you rely too much on that, that becomes a problem, right? So what coaches, if let's say I'm talking to a coach cannot take this talk. Let's say we're having this talk right now. A coach can look at this and go, because Ben says, too much data is no good. Let's work on biofeedback. I'm not going to learn anything about the data. Let's just talk to my client about understanding their body better. And that's not the point I want to make because your clients will be more educated than you as a coach. Now clients are coming in with their HRV data. They're showing me on their phone, this is what my HRV data is. Can you tell me what am I to do with it? So if your
Yeah.
clients know about data and you as a coach are not keeping up with that empirical trend to understand how to interpret the data, and then in your role as a coach to go, now I understand what the data is saying. This is what we can do to change your training because we need your recovery. Right now you're under recovery. That's a great sign. But also at the same time, let me teach you to be sensitive to your body. Let me teach you to read some of these signs even before you're reading the data on your
Yeah.
Whoop.
Yeah.
And that's what coaches need to learn, but a lot of coaches go the other way. It's one way
Yeah.
or the other.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that, because even though you and I have such different training like we train differently. I would say yours is more of a traditional kind of muscle bias, I suppose, and definitely mine's a little bit more play and movement. But it's the same ethos at the center of it, which is why I
Mhm.
find it really interesting and really fascinating, because it kind of lives in this center of like, yes, science is good, but we don't need all of that to kind of really function well. And I'll use a client this morning she came in, and at the moment her body is in complete overdrive. Like
Mm,
every muscle is turned on, stress and pain. It's got all these things, and we can't really work out what's going on. Is it hormonal? Is it dietary? Is it work? Is it what's happening? And the last thing that she needs is more stress. So it's
yep.
like, okay, don't push. How about we just find a way to downregulate your nervous system? And
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
she's got a breathing technique. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll film you a little down-regulating movement practice. And I think that that's the challenge when we're, like you said, when we're looking at all this empirical scientific data and protocols from people like Huberman and ongoing, is that we miss that, right? Because
Yep.
even though she doesn't wear, the watch or whatever, she feels, I feel this isn't working, like this isn't happening. And I
Mm.
don't think you need to be a scientist to kind of know, okay, we need to find a different methodology to figure out what's happening with her body.
Yep.
And that's so important, to be able to have those ups and downs of your life and be like, okay, no, that's not working for me now, or it did work for me, but maybe it won't work for me as I get older. And yeah, it's such a, I'm so glad that you have made that that distinguishing line. It's really important.
Yeah. And again, so this is interesting. You brought up a really interesting subject. And if you don't mind me just kind of delving into it, I'll
Delve.
give you an example. Yeah. Example of one of my clients, right? So he's got his Whoop on. He is, all into data, and he's talking about the fact that he's tracking his HRV, and he knows when it goes into the red and when it's actually really, really good. And he goes, there are times where I eat certain foods or I go out and drink, and all of a sudden it goes red, tells me my recovery is horrible and I need to do this. And I don't understand because I actually don't feel that bad. And then when I do feel bad, for example, when I'm not sleeping well, it's not showing me that I'm in the red. It tells
Yeah.
me that I'm okay. I'm kind of passable, but I'm definitely not in the red as yet. But then I have a glass of wine and all of a sudden I'm in the red. Now it's important to understand what the HRV is there for. It measures heart rate variability. That's what it's there to measure. It's there to measure signs of what your body could be telling you. But more than just the physical signs, there are also psychological signs, mental signs, emotional signs that perhaps it may not measure that you will need to understand on your own accord. Now, who understands your body the best? It's the person. So if my client tells me I am feeling tired, I do not need data from the HRV to go, let me confirm that with the HRV before I modulate your workouts. Do you understand that, right?
100%.
Even if your HRV says I'm okay, but you're telling me mentally I'm exhausted, then I need to understand that. When I work with athletes, typically with athletes, it's really interesting. Let's say if I'm working with a soccer team, let's say a soccer team has played a match this week and they've come across a really difficult match and they are disheartened because they've lost. They come into the gym. Physically, they might feel they're up for a workout. Mentally, they're not. If you look at the HRV scores, physically it could be fine, but their mental capacity to be ready, the readiness for a workout is actually very, very low. And this is where you ask them about how do they perceive this session, perceive this strength. It's very
Yeah.
important to take their perception because their perception will determine how hard they're going to push in the workout.
Yeah.
right? As opposed to how strong they biologically can be. So a lot of these studies nowadays, when you look at studies, they will tell you that it really doesn't matter. Sometimes if you train yourself, even if you're tired, it doesn't make a difference because objectively, when we look at empirical evidence, you can still be strong. You can still live. I understand that from a physical point of view, but if this is not right and you're going into your workout, it is you are at a higher chance of injuring
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And you know your body the best. So I think it's always good to start with, okay, we know the data, but how do you feel this morning? It's
Mm-hmm.
a ask your clients, like, how do you feel? Are you feel you're good to go? Where's your head at this point in time?
You bring up a super interesting point, which actually segues really, really well into one of the videos that we'll talk about today. But perceived strength, perceived energy. I distinctly remember at university this whole debate about whether that was a useful measure or not, because, it's all about perceived. And that person doesn't even know how to get to failure. So their perceived work rate, theirs is going to be hard regardless of whether or not it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But my rebuttal every single time was, but that is hard for them. That's why they're perceiving it to be that, because they haven't been able to understand how to push any further than that. And some days you're in the gym and you pick up a barbell and it's the same weight that you've been picking up and you're like, fuck me, this feels heavy. Like, this just feels really fucking heavy today. Like, and I haven't changed anything. You're not weaker. You're not any weaker. But like you said, mentally, you're just not there. You're not in the game. Everything's sluggish. It's just not working. It feels heavier. Go with how you feel. Yeah, go with how you feel.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of that, But again, with every pro, there is a con, and this is where you get people that can over justify that as well. Where they go, oh no, I'm lazy and I don't feel like it. And this is where you need to know, okay, hey, so I guess from a perspective of a coach, you need to read the signs of your client. You need to ask the right questions so that, hey, if you're really honestly not up for it mentally, let's pull you back.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to be lazy on me, then that's a whole different ballgame.
That's a whole different conversation as well.
Yeah.
The reason why I think this is interesting is because one of the videos, we'll play it now,
is going to failure more effective than not going to failure?
This is going to generate a lot of discussion in the comments. I can't wait to see it. So I'm going to cite quite a bit of work from my powerlifting coach, Zach Robinson, because he is at FAU, just finished his PhD and did a lot of meta-regressions and meta-analyses on this exact topic. So I'll give you the answers first that are straight down the line scientific answers, and then I'll explain things. For muscular hypertrophy, you need to get close to failure. But you probably don't need to train to failure to maximize hypertrophy, but you got to get pretty close. You can be stronger, but to maximize strength, you're probably better off not touching failure very often. So there are a few studies now looking at this, showing that I think there was one study recently, and I can't remember the exact details, but I remember it being pretty well designed. And the takeaway was hypertrophy was similar between the groups, but the group that went to failure or stayed a few reps shy of failure actually got stronger compared to the group that was taking most sets to failure.
And did they control for total volume of work?
So,
because I can imagine not going to failure, you can do more sets because you've got,
and that's exactly
more quote unquote gas in the tank, right?
And practically that may be a benefit of stopping shy of failure, right? But they control for those variables. So when we talk about volume, the way we define that is essentially number of hard sets, which a hard set would be a set close to failure. The general consensus is within 5 reps of failure is considered a hard set. Now, what I will tell people is that may not sound like much. Most people have never truly pushed themselves to failure.
Is going to.
This video talks about training till failure and whether it's useful or not, and like what outcomes you get from training till failure. So what I knew, but again, always find really fascinating, the more evidence that they get on it, is one of the studies looked at, or I think they looked at a bunch of studies, the people who didn't go to failure actually got stronger, but had the same kind of level of hypertrophy or muscle gain, if you're not sure what that word is, than the people who didn't go to failure. And I think effort and intensity is something that's like is talked about. So like you have a look at the Huberman protocol, and he talks about how heavy all the effort. But I often think that effort is not well explained, or intensity is not well explained for most people. And when we're looking at failure, like what kind of comes to mind when you're training people in and around this kind of failure point? What was the first thing that popped into your head when I kind of said that?
Screaming. When you hear those guys in the gym, then is essentially they're screaming because they're training to failure. But no, you're absolutely right in that as well, right? And this actually dictates the different styles of training. And we were talking about intensity. Intensity is definitely something that is a consideration in program design. And that is when you're designing a program for, am I giving this person more volume or less volume? Typically, individuals that know how to judge intensity, they will hit failure faster. They will also optimize muscle recruitment faster. As a result of that, they probably will not need as many sets compared to someone who doesn't know how to do that. Now, here's an example. If I'm training a female client, typically it's a female client because if you look at empirical research, females have a different perception of the load that they can lift. Most females tend to underestimate themselves for whatever reason. And so when they choose a load, they will say, okay, I'm done at 12. I'm finished. Thank you for your 12 reps. I'm finished. But really, they could have done 16, 17 reps. They just kind of stop at 12. So in that sense, they're not pushing true intensity. Because they're underjudging the weight they should use. Whereas if you look at a lot of guys and how guys choose their loads, guys tend to overcompensate for the load that they choose. Whether it's an ego thing, so most guys would choose something that's heavier that they can actually lift and then try to hit that weight, which also means that they fatigue out faster. So if I were to teach a male client intensity, it would be to slightly underestimate themselves. If I were to teach a female client intensity, it's to slightly overestimate themselves. And the closer that they get to understanding their real weight, the more accurate the program, in terms of writing a program, can be for them. Because if you reach your ideal intensity faster, you will not need so much volume because your muscle has already got optimal stimulation. Whereas if, let's say, you're a female client and you're lifting lighter loads, but you're not every single set, you've got lots of energy left and you're able to do more reps, you are not at the point of fatigue, which also means that you may not stimulate hypertrophy as effectively. So you will need more volume, more sets to kind of compensate for that.
I think this is such an important point because a lot of people ask me about my training these days. And I have really cut back the volume, like really cut back the volume. But the thing that hasn't changed, or the thing that I've actually increased, is the load and intensity. It's like that has not changed. And if not, I'm actually stronger than what I was when I was training more. But I've really cut back that volume. And that's really purely a fatigue issue with myself. I know that more sets does not mean better outcomes for me. It just means more fatigue and more soreness and less ability to do things later in the week.
Spot on.
And again, these protocols can be confusing sometimes because I think my partner will hate me if I get this quote wrong. I think it's Dorian Yates who said one good set. Like you just need one good. Am I right, Ben?
Yeah. So Dorian is, he's a big proponent of that, but it actually comes from Mike Metzer.
Okay.
Mike Metzer, old school bodybuilder. Yeah, he trained at the time of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So him and Arnold Schwarzenegger had a very different approach towards training. Arnold was all about volume. And Mike Metzer was all about that one good set. So it would be a warm-up set, and then you hit that one good set where you optimize muscle recruitment. You don't need to do more than what is required, but you optimize that by having good form, choosing good intensity or ideal intensity. Mike Metzer was also the one who said that Arnold Schwarzenegger has a great physique, but if he trained the way I trained, his physique would be even better. So there you go. So that's where you get the clash of the titans.
It's such a important concept because I think you're 100% right, and I've seen that contradiction when people choose weights in the gym, and particularly because I taught classes for years and years, and I distinctly remember having to pick up heavier dumbbells for so many of I would say like my beginners and a lot of the ladies who would come in and then walking up to like the guys and being like, dude, you have to do like a minute of these. That's way too heavy. Like, this is not what we're training today. Like, no, you put it down. And I think it's a cultural thing. It's a social thing. There's layers. I don't want to unpack those layers right now, because what I do want to talk about is appropriate intensity. And this is where understanding your body, understanding training, and being consistent with some form of training, regardless of what it is, this is what it helps you to do. It helps you to understand appropriate level of work, overall volume. So that's what volume is the amount of actual total time work that you do. But then, like what you said, optimal muscle recruitment. Can my brain and my body speak the same language at the same time and concentrate on the task to get the most out of it, right? Yeah. How would you recommend someone to try and find their optimal, or their one set optimal load? Like, do you have any tips for them?
Let's say when I write a program, every program that I give a client, the program has to be repeated again and again. The only way you can establish an optimal load is you repeat the exercise again and again until you're familiar with it, right? And so if someone is used to changing their program every 2 weeks, you're not going to understand what intensity is all about. You have to stick to a program for one. But that doesn't mean you've got to stick to it for a year or 2 years. I mean, give it a good amount of time. It could be 8 weeks, it could be 10 weeks, it could be 12 weeks, right?
Nice.
The first 2-3 exposures to a program is really a trial phase. All you're trying to do is understand the load that you're picking and whether you resonate with that load to hit the given number of reps. And that's really what it is. Because once you establish a baseline, I think then every other time that you repeat the program again, you're going to build on that baseline and you're going to try to lift better and better and better. The more experienced you become at the movement itself, the closer you are to your true intensity. So the goal for intensity is practice the movement again and again. There is no other way to establish your true intensity except for practicing the movement again and again and again.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I wanted to leave with a bit of practical advice for someone who was listening to see what they could take home from us dissecting the scientific language that seems to be perpetuating in fitness land right now. Ben, thank you so much. People want to find you. That's all in the show notes there. I appreciate your time and your energy that you give to this. And if you have any lasting words for anyone listening on our topic today, would you want to add anything to say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me here. It's always a joy to speak with you. And I was hoping we had more people to kind of add into the conversation, but I do apologize that all you get to hear is me for now.
Don't apologize. We love it, Ben.
But yes, so in regards to all this empirical science, I mean, this is, to me, it is a trend. It's a trend that is pushing, and it will cycle through like any other trend. Science is what we see and what we can test. But that doesn't mean if we don't see something, it doesn't exist. A lot of the times when we read a study, we have to understand that, yes, there is truth in it, but you've got to learn how to interpret the truth in relation to you. And this is the key point. You are the key point. So when you see something that works, that doesn't mean it might work on you. It is something that works on these individuals that were tested, but you're going to understand you are an individual. So try it out. How do you feel with it? Are you able to stick to it? If this doesn't fit into that, how you react to it or how you would want yourself to react to it, then move on. Understand your body more and put more priority on that than just a study itself. Biohacking, all these trends that we're seeing right now, that's all based on empirical science. But this thing on biohacking is also relatively new. So a lot of what they're telling you that you would better your heart rate, you would work with your parasympathetic nervous system, you take this drug, that drug's going to help you recover. That's all new stuff. It has not been tested, a lot of it, for extended periods of time, which also means that your body is innately ancient. So why subject yourself all of a sudden to a range of different things in the quest for health and longevity when you could just sit back and understand your body more? Your body gives you signs every single day. You just need to know how to read them.
Was one of the most profound ways to end a podcast ever. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Honestly, that was so beautiful. That was really, really great. Thank you for your wisdom. I cannot wait to have you back on, and perhaps we will panel it out next time. We'll see how we go, but have a beautiful day, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for that.
Do you know someone who's struggling with pain or frustration when it comes to exercise? If this episode reminded you of someone, please share this episode with them. Sometimes all it takes is the right information at the right time, and it can make a significant difference. Let's spread the word and help more people find joy in movement.